Hi everyone, and welcome to Local Notes. This is a video and podcast series dedicated to local musicians and their craft. I'm Dave Wright, and the only thing I can play is the radio. But I do enjoy listening to great music, and with a few of my friends, I spend a lot of time traveling around to hear some of our best local music. This series has two real objectives. One is to give some of the great talent an opportunity to tell their side of the story. I'm talking about the kind of stuff we don't normally get to hear about. Secondly, I'm trying to bring some attention to an area that's really hurting right now. Where would we be without all these super talented people that keep us entertained? So let's not waste any more time and get to it. So first of all, we have Gary Antol of the Jacob Ferry Stragglers. I'm excited. He's my first guest. This is episode number 1. And Gary, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Sure, thanks for asking.
Yeah. No, it's been really cool. I first met you, I think, in 2013 at Kane's Crab Shack. You had a day where you played down in Washington. You had a couple other shows, and you came in real late that night.
Yeah, it was Cannonsburg. It was Oktoberfest in Cannonsburg, somewhere else, and then there. It was like I remember that particular weekend. I think we played 7 times in 3 days or something like that.
Yeah, it was crazy. You all were exhausted by the time you showed up there that night.
Yeah, I don't really miss those days.
Okay, so real quick, is there anything new planned for the band? Are you working on any albums? Anything you'd like to plug coming out?
Well, that's such an interesting question. You know, we did, like we were just in Nashville for we played the Station Inn in Nashville.
Right.
And we had plans on beginning some new recording there. We're on a small label based out of Nashville called Bell Buckle Records, and it's run by a bluegrass singer named Valerie Smith. She has a band, Valerie Smith and the Liberty Pike. Really cool band. She's a really great person. And we were going to start a new project, and then right before the show happened, the Station Inn actually closed due to a COVID problem. And we weren't sure if there was going to be a show, so we canceled the recording session.
Right.
Ended up going to do the show, and now we don't really have. I mean, aside from there's one JFS show on the books for the remainder of this year that we haven't announced yet because we're waiting to see if we're actually going to do it. We talked. We what I think we're going to end up doing is. We were like, the plan was to start a new project. The frightening thing about starting a new project is that it's pretty costly, and normally that's just part of the business model. But the problem now is that there's no business, so it's almost, we are almost afraid. And even our label suggested that it might not be the wisest idea to spend 5 figures on an album right now, not knowing when we'll be able to be back on tour to sell it,
Right.
But what I think we're going to do is this summer we did a bit of a tribute show to help raise money for one of the venues in Pittsburgh that was having problems, and I think we're going to release that this winter.
Cool.
I think so.
All right.
Yeah, we have the recording of it is pretty good. It'll work, we're like, it's already done, so it wouldn't be such a costly thing to do.
Right.
Yeah, and we're also booking ourselves. We're using it as a booking tool for next year.
Right.
Should things happen. So, plus, as far as we know, I'm not going to say what it is on the podcast, but as far as we know, we're the only bluegrass band that's ever really done a full tribute to this. So It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I did a lot of searching. While I found some versions of some popular songs by this band done in a bluegrass style, I never found a full show. So
now, you're not talking about anything you've already done, right?
We've already done it.
Okay.
In fact, you've seen us do it.
Okay, all right then. Then I'm going to
Yeah.
leave one of my questions for later out and let it be a surprise.
Yeah. Well, I'm you know, I don't want to,
Okay,
I don't
no,
know when
that's
you're going
cool.
to air. I don't know when you're going to air this, and I don't want someone to be like, "Oh, that's a good idea," you
Yeah,
know.
no,
So
it's yep, good
I'm
enough.
usually
Enough
not,
said.
I'm usually not very secretive about things, but this one I'm gonna, because it's just different.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's just different.
So you brought up the Station Inn, and I want to know, why is that so special to you? I mean, I could tell that that was a big deal to you. Why?
I mean, for a lot of reasons, one, you and I've sort of talked about this as friends before, but although I'm in this bluegrass band, that is not really where I come from as a musician. It's actually pretty far away from where I come from as a musician, except that I've always, even my jazz teacher, my famous jazz teacher, told me one day, he looked at me and said, he said, you should go to Nashville and be a flat picker. He said, you're never going to sound like you didn't grow up around cows. That's what he said. He said, you just sound, he said, your swing's kind of country,
Mhm.
So, it took 10 years or so, and I guess I'd exhausted everything. And then I fell into this in the Weed Rags, with
Right,
Andy Gregg.
right,
And, I mean, actually Andy Gregg is like my friend, but he's the reason that I get to do what I do. He's a big part of it. He introduced me to a lot of things. Um, but, you know, for one, when I lived in Nashville for a long time, and I would go there, I would go to the Station Inn every now and then. I just liked it because it's the least touristy looking tourist spot on earth.
right.
It's that once you're inside of it, you could be at any roadhouse
Hmm.
on earth.
Hmm.
And I liked that about it, and I really liked the music. Um, so I remember being there, and I said, I remember thinking like, boy, I would love to play in here one day. I don't know, 27 or 28 years old then. And I would just love to play here, but I had no idea how A, I could, or
Right,
B, how difficult that would be to achieve, you
right.
know? So, JFS, the band, we just had our 6th birthday this month, a couple weeks ago. The day we played the Station Inn was actually our 6th anniversary of our first show,
That's
6 years
kind of
later.
amazing. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after we started, like from a non-musical standpoint, just the practicality of what I thought I might want to try to do, because I really wasn't sure, you
Hmm.
know, um, like you have to give things time. Everything takes longer than you think it should. And it's a very patient game. But I made a list of things I wanted to do. I just, I made a list of venues and festivals and just, projects and ideas, just things that I thought maybe I could do this, this could be cool. And the Station Inn was the first venue I wrote down, you know, um,
Right.
partially because at the time it was one, I wasn't aware of a whole lot of famous bluegrass venues, you know,
Hmm.
um, and then just secondly, because I'd been there so many times, I'd seen so much just like incredible music on that stage, and
Right,
I just thought, man, it would just be so neat to get to stand on that stage and do it one time, you
right.
know, and then I tried for years, and I tried, like it was almost like every 2 or 3 months I sent them an email, just, hey, here's my band, we're going to be coming through your town, your area, do you have a spot, and like I never heard back, I never even got a reply, you
Mhm.
know so about a year ago we were picked up by a booking agent out of North Carolina called Midwood Entertainment, and a management company out of Baltimore, and all these kind of cool things happened for us, and in the first conversation, our agent Brian asked me, he said, well, are there any places you'd like to play, you know and I said the Station Inn, and he said, you guys have never played the Station Inn? And I said, well, no, we haven't played the Station Inn. And he was kind of like dumbfounded. He was like, well, I mean, we'd played Delfest and Gray Fox Bluegrass Festival, and we've been very blessed with playing some really nice shows,
Right,
getting
right.
to do really cool things. And he just said, I don't understand why they haven't had you. He said, you need to be there. And I said, well, I mean, you tell me, man, like I tried, and like 2 hours later, I got an email from him. It said, hey, you're confirmed at the Station Inn on May 23rd, you know? So it was really just about having the connection.
Right, right.
Even the email response said like, "Oh, I've just been waiting for someone to pick these guys up," and so it was almost like annoying in a way. It's like, man, after like, it
Yeah,
was
that's
in a
gotta be
way.
a little defeated.
It was a little bit frustrating,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but then again, it wasn't. That was exactly what I wanted from the situation. So, and then so we had this great May tour lined up this year that was we were going to open for a pretty well-known band in Nashville. The next night we were going to play the Station Inn. The next day we were going to travel to Cumberland, Maryland, and then the next day we were going to play Delfest. It was like, and we were going to release an album on that tour. It's like a Field of Dreams kind of tour, for us. And unfortunately it didn't happen. COVID shut everything down. But in sometime in September they reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to reschedule? We have this date." Mm-hmm. And like I just sent the band a message. I said, "It doesn't matter what you think you're doing on November 7th. I'm going to be in Nashville."
November 7th. Yes, that's amazing.
And it was really cool. It was really cool.
Amazing. And obviously I didn't get to go, and it meant a lot to me that you reached out afterwards. It really did. And I also heard,
well, they told me what happened. And I was just like, man, that's the worst. But we'll be back.
Yeah.
We'll be back.
Well, that's what I heard. A reliable source told me that you have a welcome invitation to come back.
I got a very nice email from them after the fact. I mean, they said the staff there said some very nice things while we were there. And it was interesting that the girl that ran sound for us there, Rebecca Spears, or Rebecca Long, mm-hmm. is a pretty well-known bluegrass singer. We'd played on festivals with her. So it was the first thing she said when I walked in. She said, "I've seen you guys." And she'd seen us like in Seattle.
Wow.
A couple of years, in Washington, we played a festival with her out there. Uh-huh. So they had nice things to say, which was nice,
awesome.
And it was. And the online thing, their Station Inn TV thing, mm-hmm. Our fans were pretty nice and generous with that. We did more than most people did.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
I'm happy for you, dude. I really am.
Oh man, it was like I wasn't nervous until I was standing there. It was like literally when the house music went down and I was standing there on the stage, I was just like, oh wow, so here we are.
Do you get nervous before every show?
I'm kind of constantly nervous. That's the joke about me. Is it like I'm kind of like I try to be relaxed and mellow, but I'm not really. Like I'm pretty fired up most of the time, Right. So like it can be a problem because I try to direct it like in a positive way, and sometimes I'm just overly enthusiastic about things, mm-hmm. And like I don't know, it's got to be hard to drive 600 miles in a van with me when I get to talking. It's got to be. Sometimes I start talking and I'll have an idea and I'll say, okay, well, what about this? And I'll lay it all out, and by the time I'm done, no one's awake.
Right. Nothing never stops. It just
no, but I look in the mirror and everybody's just asleep.
Wow, that's amazing.
I talk a lot.
Yeah. So what made you and Libby decide the Jacob Ferry Stragglers? How did you come up with the name? How did you get started with the band?
That's a funny story in a way. It's like we had this idea. I had this idea to kind of spite the person that was the reason we changed our name, mm-hmm. And I wanted to call the band the Grass Raptors, right? And it's complicated, but that's what I wanted to call it.
Okay.
And no one thought that was a good idea. And we were just kind of like for months, after the Weed Rags split up, like after Andy left, and started his solo thing, mm-hmm. We had a lot of shows booked that year as the Weed Rags. So we played until October of that year as the Weed Rags, okay. trying to figure out what we were going to call the band,
right.
Right. And I remembered my dad a long time ago suggesting to me on our way down to Carmichael's to go to Larry's Music Center in Carmichael's, you drive by these signs for Jacob's Ferry, and I remember my dad suggesting to me that I should start a band and call it Jacob's Ferry, and I kind of threw that out there, mm-hmm. and Libby and everyone involved kind of went, that's okay, mm-hmm. and like, I was like, well, we're running out of time. we got to decide on something. So one day I went for a ride. I realized that all this time that I'd been going down there, like my whole life, I'd never actually driven down to Jacobs Ferry, So I thought, well, if I'm going to name the band after it, I've got to go see it.
Yeah.
So I followed this road, literally the road's like one of those little green county roads that goes through people's yards almost.
Right.
And
Sorry, man.
Yeah. I mean, like there were cows on the road and stuff. And I got down there to the bottom of the hill where the ferry landing was. And there's like a basketball court that had no hoops. There were no rims on the court, just the backdrops. There were, and maybe like 2 double wide trailers that had carports built over them. And that was all that was there. That was it. And I looked around and I thought, this is it. And then like the joke of it, like it's a cosmic joke almost. I was like, that's perfect. Because when people say, why are you called Jacobs Ferry? I said, well, it's named after a town in Greene County, And in the years since then, I probably had 10 or 15 people tell me they've gone on a road trip to find it and have been confused as to why I would name a band after it. And I said, well, that's why I did it, because it's nothing. Yeah. But I thought it needed a third word. It's a string band thing, Old Crow Medicine Show. They all have these long names, Right. And I thought I wanted the longest possible name because I knew we were unknown, and I thought that if we could manage to get on music festivals, our name would have to take up a whole line on the flyer.
Right.
So, you'd see it and, yeah. And then like I said, Stragglers, because there's like string band names. Their string bands are often called the Rounders, the Morgantown Rounders or the whatever, Yeah. And like very, very few are called Stragglers. There's the country singer from Texas, Jason Boland, and his band is called the Stragglers. Jason Boland and the Stragglers.
Okay.
Yeah. And I liked it, and I actually met a guy from their band a few years ago, and he told me, he said, I'm in a band called the Stragglers. And I was like, is it Jason Boland's band? And he said, yeah. And I said, I hope he's cool, they don't want any legal trouble. But I said Stragglers, Libby said no, so if you go to our website, it's just jacobsferry.com.
Yeah.
It's because I bought it before we were called the Stragglers. Gotcha. And then right at the last minute, right before I made the launch announcement, that everybody in the band said, no, I kind of like Stragglers. I like it. So right at the last minute, we became the Jacobs Ferry Stragglers, and it's been suggested to me to drop Stragglers a few times by people. People have a hard time saying it. They say Stranglers.
Right.
But the JFS thing is kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And the straggle is real.
That's one of the best lines ever.
Yeah, man. Doug Coman. He did it. It was Doug Coman. It was a tie. He and another guy said it on a Facebook post within seconds of each other.
Oh, right.
So, yeah.
Wow. Love that.
But yeah, and I refer to the band as the Stragglers all the time.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
That's how I refer to it,
Right.
But yeah, that was it. I mean, it's just my dad said I was kind of looking to play in a blues band, and he said you should call it Jacobs Ferry. And if you go back to that time period, that was probably 20 years ago, roughly, in the early 2000s. There were all these pop country bands out there that had names like that, like
Right.
Little Big Town and stuff. And at the time, I was in a pop country band. So like I was in a pop country band named after a town in Greene County. I was in the Rough Creek band at the time. So
that's funny. Speaking of your dad, it's funny. So I know we kind of probably know who each other is, and he always likes a lot of my posts on Facebook, and we became Facebook friends just a few days ago. I thought that was kind of cool. And I know he's had a huge impact on your life. I've never asked you about it, but I can tell. Obviously, you came up in a musical situation.
Sort of. I sort of did. Yeah. So my dad plays a little bit of guitar, like he messes around with the guitar, and he was like the first teacher that I had, Okay. And my dad had 2 older brothers, one of whom passed away before I was born. and then the other one was like 16 years older than him. And he was a saxophone player, tenor sax player in a polka band that was around here for 40 years called the Melody Aces.
Wow.
You know, yeah, they were called the Melody Aces. So as a kid, I was always around that, you know, and like, well, I was about 5 when my dad finally caved and got me a little K guitar and started showing me stuff. And I was maybe 8 or 9 when I started learning to play a saxophone from my uncle.
Okay.
You know, and my sister, I have a younger sister who played, she played a little bit of clarinet and, you know, a little bit of keyboard and stuff like that. And I was just always drawn to it. I have a picture of me as a baby, my mom was pregnant with my sister in the picture. So I wasn't 2 years old yet. I know that I'm almost to the day 2 years older than my sister. And I had this little toy guitar of mine out on a bed and my dad's real guitar on either side of me. And I was playing them, you know? So they say that, you know, my mom and dad have told me I just really wanted to do it, you know, like I was really drawn to it. So, I mean, yeah, like there was music around, you know, my grandmother there was a lot of music around, when I think about it, a lot of really different influences in what I liked, you know, like big band music. I really love big band music a lot, you know, and, you know, my mom really loved it and my grandmother really loved it. My uncle really loved it, you know, like my uncle was born in the mid-30s, so he was there for it, you know, and so loved that. And they just, my parents were very, what's the right word? Supportive people with my sister and I, you know, like my sister was quite an athlete, you know, so like every opportunity they tried to give me for music, they also gave her for swimming and whatever else. Like they were good parents, you know. You know, but my dad, because I know I talk about him a lot, you know. My dad's sort of like, it's funny, my friends call me, I have a nickname, right? They've taken to calling me the Buddha Hick.
The Buddha Hick.
The Buddha Hick. Like I've got all these city friends, you know.
Yeah.
And they call me a hick, but they say I'm in possession of some sort of country wisdom that they don't understand, and it evolved into this Buddha Hick thing, you know. The real truth is I'm just kind of being like my dad. I mean, like my dad is very much like a Yoda like figure in life, like Mr. Miyagi kind of stuff,
right?
You know,
the gentle guidance kind of thing.
He definitely was, you know. He was full of like he still is. He's full of all these simple little statements about life that, like, as the older I've gotten, I'm just like, God, man, he was absolutely right about everything. You know, his big one was always it's like hard work is easy to find, easy work is hard to find. You know, yeah. One time he handed me, I was in my 20s. I was maybe 21 or 22. I was home from college or something, or I was home. I was working. I was out of college. I just come back from a few months on a cruise ship, you know, because I worked for cruise ships then. And he, you know, like the night before you get off the cruise liner as a crew member is like a heck of a party. You know, back then I did that stuff still. So like, you know, I stayed up all night. I flew home, like got home late in the day, slept. Like 6 o'clock the next morning or 7 o'clock the next morning, Dad wakes me up, you know, and tells me that I'm digging holes in the yard today so that he can build a grape arbor, you know. And so he takes me out into this spot in the yard where he's going to build it, and standing there, and he's got like a 40-50 pound pry bar, like this big 6 foot tall pry bar, and a post hole. And a post hole digger, right? You know. And he says, I'm going to show you how I want you to do this, right? So he does, and he tells me how much elevation has to change because on a hill and everything. And I'll never forget. He hands me the post hole digger, and he says, "These are tools of ignorance." That's what he said. He said, "These are tools of ignorance." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You don't have to be smart to use these." He said, "But you can get a lot done with these things." You know. I said, "Okay." He said,
"Pretty wise."
Yeah, well, he was a coal miner for 44 years, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. So he said, I use these things every day. And I said, okay. And he said, once you dig these holes, you're going to know why you shouldn't use these things every day. You know, and he said, you should find another way, you know? Yeah, it was funny. It was just him being him, you know. I mean, he was kind of being a smart aleck with me. He was kind of challenging me in a way, you know, but like, that's just how he is, you know. He's a smart guy. He's a smart guy, nice guy.
Wow.
You know.
Awesome.
Yeah. He tells me we have the same problem, you know. He like, I like to drive, you know, and like, I mean, I drive a lot, you know. I drive a lot, you know. I like to drive. I drive like 60,000 miles a year, you know, for the band alone. And for the most part, I do it in silence, you know, like there's not really any music playing. Everybody's got headphones on or whatever. And I'm in the silence, you know, and I think a lot. And he once told me that, like, you know, he was a fire boss underground for most of his time, which is just a lot of walking, you know, like a lot of walking alone in mine, you know. And I remember him saying, he was like, it's what I love and it's what I hate because it gives me too much time to think, you know. And you know, there's a lot of ghosts in a coal mine, you know. And like I said, well, you know what, there's a lot of ghosts in a driver's seat too.
Absolutely. I've done 60,000 miles a year being in sales. And I used to drive to Syracuse every 2 weeks. And
that's a haul.
Yeah,
that's a haul.
When you're behind that windshield, it can drive you crazy sometimes.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But sometimes I lose hours. Sometimes I'm just like, oh my goodness, I just drove 150 miles and I don't even remember it.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. You know. But yeah, so that's kind of Dad. You know, Dad's just what he's like. You know, and also just like he spoiled me. You know, like I think he kind of got a little bit of a vicarious living thing through me with the instrument, you know, with the guitar. So I have a really cool guitar collection, you know. And it's really about only 2/3 of what I had. You know, some of it I sold off like a moron, you know, when I was young and I needed money. But like, you know, like he bought stuff. He's just like, hey, check this out. Like almost to the point where it annoyed me. It was almost like, man, like people are starting to talk. You know, like every 6 months I have this new awesome instrument, you know. But now I have them all. You know? So like it's a pretty neat thing.
It is, absolutely.
It's a pretty neat thing.
Absolutely. How did you meet Libby?
So a friend of mine, who's a friend of hers from Morgantown, West Virginia, who's in another band from there, bluegrass band from there. He just kept telling me, he said, you need a fiddle player. You need a fiddle player. I said, I know, I want a fiddle player, you know. Like Sarah Zebley played fiddle with us every now and then, but you know, she was doing her other stuff, and like Bobby played. We had people played fiddle with us, you know, but no one.
Sarah's doing amazing, by the way, right? I mean,
she's awesome.
Playing down in Nashville.
Yeah, she's done a very good job.
Yep.
You know. Yep. I met her when she was like 21, so it's cool to see what a good job she's done.
I met her one night in Nashville, and she was hanging out with me in the posse, and we were doing our rounds, and she was actually buying rounds here and there. It was a lot of fun. She was very nice.
Yeah, Sarah's a cool girl. She's a really nice person.
It was cool.
But so my buddy, there's a strange thing is so like Wednesday nights in Morgantown in the real world, normal times, there's a huge old time music jam at the brew pub at the Morgantown Brewery. It's been happening for like 30 years, right? And it's like the thing. I mean, there's a lot of people go to this thing, you know. And at the same time, right across the street, there's an open mic night, a songwriter night that my friend hosts. So I went to it almost every Wednesday for like 2 years, you know. And I'd go over and hang out at the jam. And my buddy says, you just really need to meet Libby. You need to meet Libby Eddy. And she needs to be in your band, you know. And we just kept missing each other over the course. I'd walk in and he'd be like, man, Libby just left, you know. I'd be like, I mean, I had to have passed her coming in and out of the place a few times. I'd met her once really briefly before, like about a year before this. But eventually he just sent me a message and her a message on Facebook. And it said, you two need to talk, do it. And I just put my phone number in, you know, I just put my number there. I said, well, here's my number. I have a gig tomorrow night until 8:00. Call me after that. And like, I don't know, 8:30, I was driving home and she called, you know, And the next night is probably the next night, or it was that Wednesday. I decided to like, we officially had like a job interview, where like I went down there and she came in and we met, and it wasn't much of a job interview. It was kind of like we went and shot pool. She talked a whole bunch of on the professional game, and it was within about 15 minutes it became not a job interview.
Right.
And now she's like upstairs. We've kind of been together since that day.
Wow.
We just kind of immediately hit it off.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Awesome. Well, she's super talented. She's like you on the violin. You guys are wonderful together. So
she can sing.
Yeah, she can sing. You both can sing. You can sing too. I've heard you a couple times. You're pretty good. So, let's see. What is your favorite place to play? I mean, I don't want. That's got to be a good one. I mean, I guess maybe the Station Inn now.
Yeah, that's a good question. My favorite place there. So it's been a lot of. There could be a lot of answers to that one.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I've probably played at Rinky Dinks more than I've played anywhere else. Starting back when I was about 24 in various bands.
Right, right.
Like a lot of different. And JFS doesn't really go. We don't really play there. We have, but we don't do it that often.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite place to play was the Rex Theater in Pittsburgh.
Yes,
it just was. It was, we played one of the very last shows that happened there, like within 2 weeks of it closing. Within 2 weeks of the lockdowns, and then it didn't make it. They had to fold up, but it was like that was kind of a goal of mine, I wanted to be able to sell that place out, and it's 500-600 people. It's a big club.
Right.
And there was just something about doing that twice. We played the Rex 4 times, but only two times were we not the opener.
Right.
And there's something really nice about that. I really like 123 Pleasant Street in Morgantown.
Mm-hmm.
That's like our second home, because Libby's from Morgantown.
Right.
Delfest was definitely the best music festival I've ever played.
When you were at Delfest, did you meet Billy Strings?
I didn't meet Billy at Delfest, but I've met him twice before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I met him first. I met him when the normal people were really just starting to hear about him. Like we in the bluegrass world, we've been hearing about him for a long time. He's been around 8 or 9 years,
Right.
But I met him. I mean, when I met him, he was probably slightly bigger than our band is. He wasn't really a thing yet,
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I met him was at the Rex, actually, in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy that played mandolin in his band at the time was a friend of mine. And I went to see the headliner. Billy wasn't the headliner. So like I walked in and I see my buddy on stage, and I'm like, what the heck is Drew doing here? Who's this band? And then the kid took like one guitar solo, and I was like, this has to be Billy Strings. There's no way, And Drew introduced me to him. He was really nice. And then about a year and a half later, maybe a year later, a little more than a year later in Florida, we did our yearly Baygrass Bluegrass Festival tour and our Florida tour. And Billy was the headliner on the festival that year, and we got to hang out with him, and he was, he did something that really kind of, I found very impressive, actually. He's the star, like his name's on it. He's a star. Right. And after his band set was done, they came out and they met the people. They did their merchandise table thing and everything. And then he went over to the stage. He disappeared. He went over to the stage and he packed up all the band's gear himself, loaded it into the band's trailer himself. And then he was the bus driver, and I thought like, well, it was like, man, okay, so he worked for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I thought that was real. I mean, like, even I don't do that, like I'm not going to pick up everybody's stuff.
Right.
But, and then he invited everybody over to where he was staying, the house that they let him stay in that night. And I confess to having been exhausted. Everybody in the band went, but Jody and we didn't go.
Right.
But this is a really nice guy.
Cool.
Yeah, he was really cool.
Did you ever hear the story with him and his Martin guitar?
No.
So I guess when he was young, his dad had this beautiful, very expensive Martin guitar, and it's out there. The story's on YouTube, and they were in really hard times, and he didn't want to do it, but his dad had to sell the guitar,
Yeah.
and I think he sold it for, I don't know, $3,000 or something, and it was a nice guitar. Well, I guess, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, or 8 years went by, and he's browsing Craigslist, and the guitar pops up, and it's his father's guitar, and he
He
found
bought
it
it.
on Craigslist, and he still hadn't made it big, so he didn't have a lot of money, and he like begged the guy. He told him the story that this was my dad's, and he begged the guy to take payments, and the guy's like, "You're crazy, dude.
Yeah,
It's
right.
a $3,000 guitar. I'm not going to take payments." And so the guy's wife actually found the way to his heart, and talked him into taking payments. And he sent him $700 a month until he could pay for the guitar. And the guy sent him the guitar, and he gave it to his dad like for his birthday.
Yeah, that's cool.
That
So
is
I remember seeing a video of him giving his dad a guitar for his birthday or something like that, but I didn't know that was the story. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I think the one you're talking about,
Oh no, it was the Billy
one from a brand that they just put his
Yeah.
name on it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
That's really cool. He was, he was a really nice. He was a really nice person. Actually, he was. He was kind of shy.
really,
For sure.
he's
Well,
a guy I would love to get on here.
I've seen him post about having like he feel like he has an anxiety issue. I've seen him talk about it on Facebook,
Right.
and like I could see it. I could understand, man. Like, I mean, if you would, when you get to play for like a lot of people and they all want to come talk to you when it's done, it's not exactly easy.
Yeah.
It's a big distraction
Right.
thing, So like, I mean, I've never experienced it on the level that Billy does now. I mean, Billy probably doesn't experience now. He probably just goes away, gets on the bus, and things are better now than they used to be.
Yeah.
But
That
could be challenging. It's actually really hard when for instance, like y'all came on, like everybody came to Florida, like
Yeah.
or like everybody was in Nashville,
Right.
The crew was in Nashville. So when the show's over, everybody comes up and, hey,
Yep.
but then there's like the people that just saw us for the first time that either want to buy a CD or want to say hi, so it's like a very divided attention kind of thing. I just run from it. I do,
But you do a good job. You do a good job. You do. So I know, we've gone to the party down near West Virginia that you have every year. And and no matter how busy you are or what's going on, you always make your way over to say hi to us. You always sit down, drink a Pepsi, you hang out you're not in a rush. You don't know how much it means to us. And I know,
I mean, like, you're there. You don't know how much that means to me, But this year, especially after we did it this year, after the show was over, after the Saturday night set, I went out and I walked around to every campsite where people were. Every one of them. I went to every place where there were people. There weren't people at all of them,
Right.
But I went to every one of them and I just like popped in on everyone, just like, hey, how you doing? And partially to kind of get everybody back for doing it to me all the time, but also just like I think that's important, like I told this person this the other night that was a younger person that is trying to start some sort of music thing, and he asked me for advice, and I said, well, I'm the last person you should really ask for advice about anything, But I said, well, what do you think you want to do? And he had all these things about the music and all these ideas. And I just like, I honestly didn't really even listen to him. When he was done, I said, here's what you have to do. And I really believe this, like, you have to build a community. Like your band has to be a community, So it's got to be about something other than just like, hey, I want you to come spend money in this place while I play music. Like the more direct contact you can have with the people, the better it is. And I personally think that, like, because of folks like you and, a lot of other people too,
Right.
like
Right.
I get to eat and my rent's paid, like you guys support the business that we have. So
Right.
like, why not? I mean, I feel like I owe it to everyone,
Right.
I mean, to tell you the truth, man, it's not the easiest business in the world at all,
Right.
or lifestyle at all. And there have been 1,000 times that I've said out loud, I quit. And the only and the only reason that I don't is that the only reason that I don't sometimes is I realize what that would mean for people.
Right.
It would really let a lot of people have really stuck with us through some crazy stuff.
Right.
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 And like, I mean, it's weird. It's like, as a person, I think every musician would say this, if you go from like the situation where, say 5 years ago, right? Like, or say 9 years ago, 10 years ago, when Andy and I were playing together, right?
Mm-hmm.
We played in so many places where no one was paying one bit of attention to us the whole time, and like JFS, that was the first few years. There was it was really up or really sucked. That was it, and like, like you just kind of get over that. That's just, like I'm like a football coach about it almost. It's like win one for the Gipper. It's like, oh, well, you think this sucks? Well, make them listen. Like, like make them listen, just do it, So like, having gone through that for so long, so many times, for us to have been like in Florida or out on the West Coast a couple of years ago, and people actually flew from here to there and followed us, like you guys in Florida, but then there's like a whole, like, it's bizarre that some of our best shows are in Florida in the winter because people fly from all over the place just to come,
Right. Right.
Yeah. So like maybe 75, 80, 100 people over the course of a tour are like, man, we came here just to see you and spend a weekend, like that's a mind-blowing thing. It's just mind-blowing,
2 years ago, when I saw you guys down in the Keys, it was one of the best vacations I ever had. I mean,
Thanks, man.
Oh, it was great to see you. Rick and I went deep sea fishing, and we each caught 2 sailfish. Yeah, it was just, the whole trip was just amazing. I went square dancing for the first time since
right. I mean, when those folks first hit me for the show, like we were, how we ended up doing that is a pretty funny story, actually, but it was probably in 2014 or 2015. I don't know, around then, there is this thing called the Augusta Bluegrass Heritage Center. And it happens at Davis and Elkins College in Elkins, West Virginia. It's like a week-long camp, right? Mm-hmm. And the people that run it are like the steel drivers, and it's like really big people run this. Yeah, it's a big deal, right?
Right.
But some of the people that run it are also on the committee that runs Gray Fox Bluegrass Festival, right? And I wanted to play Gray Fox. I just wanted to, right? So on our way to a show that was south of that, we actually broke into the camp, right? We stopped at Elkins, right? We broke in, right? We went up to the area where there were all these, the attendees of the camp and everything. Ray was there. Ray wasn't even in the band yet, but Ray was there.
Okay.
Right? And our plan was to find out where these people were having dinner, right? And then assemble outside of that and make it seem as though we were just standing there jamming tunes, but we were gonna play our own songs,
right?
In the hope that they'd walk out the door past us and hear us, So the director of the festival walks out the door, listens to us, comes over and says, "Are you a band? Do you have CDs?" And I said, "Here we do." So I handed him a copy of The Lane Change, our first album. Said, "Thanks." And then this other guy walked up to me, and he's like this tall guy with curly hair. And he said, "Do you have a card? I run an event." And I said, "I do." I gave him the card, and that was it, right? We snuck back out, and we left. Total guerrilla warfare, right? Total guerrilla warfare. But then like that winter, that was in the summer, that winter, I got a phone call from this guy. And he was like, I don't know if you remember me. My name's Rob. I met you at Davis and Elkins College. I walked up to you while you were playing on a porch. And I run this festival called the Baygrass Bluegrass Festival in Florida Keys. And I'm wondering if you'd be interested in coming, And I was just like, yeah, when is it? And he said, January, And then he asked me how much money I wanted. And I said, I don't even know what to ask for. I told him the truth. I said, you just tell me what you want to pay us. Because you're saying, do I want to come to Florida in January? And I live in Pennsylvania. So as long as as long as it's reasonable, we're there,
Right.
I made an offer and we went. And then a few months later, Gray Fox called us and said, hey, we want to offer you the showcase at our festival this summer. So it worked.
Right.
Yeah, it worked.
It totally worked.
Yeah, it was totally guerrilla warfare. What we we were climbing fences and stuff and throwing instruments over.
Was it the total lineup that you have today?
No, it was the first lineup.
Okay.
It was me, Libby, Mitch Hall playing banjo, and Ed Croft playing bass, and then Ray just happened to be there.
Right.
So he jammed with us.
Right.
Which it's funny. I make fun of him now. It probably actually helped us seem a little bit more like a jam because he didn't know any of the music, so he was just kind of winging it as he went on the mandolin, and he didn't really play mandolin often then. So it was less than perfect.
Right.
Probably gave us some credibility as a jam group. Not
Wow.
Yeah.
Ray's really a fiddle guy, right?
Ray's a really pretty fantastic player.
Yeah.
He's a really good guitar player too.
Really. He's just super talented. Yeah.
He's an annoying little savant.
I got to really hang out with him at the party this year, and it was a lot of fun. He's a great guy.
Ray's good people, man.
His parents are nice. So
they're wild. Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
His mom.
I know, man. I know. His dad too. His dad's kind of like an old wizard. Ray's gonna turn into an old wizard.
So the night when you were trailer hopping, we had probably 7 or 8 musicians at my camper. And it was Sam Stuckey and a guy, Dave, that's a friend of yours, who we became friends.
Stop. I know Dave.
Yeah, he showed up. Everybody had their guitars and they were playing around the circle. Everybody's picking a song, and me and Cobb are just loving it. We think it's awesome. We're in heaven. And it was a really, really, really fun night. And that's what I picture of the way it should be,
it was actually, it was, I had a lot of people come up to me at the event this year, and especially afterward, and say man, that was maybe the best music festival I've ever been to, and I mean, it was just that some of it was just that it was the only one that happened anywhere near here,
right?
This summer, because it was small enough that it was allowed to happen, but it was really nice. It was a really good group of people, not too many crazy people,
The funny part of it is we probably went till 3:30 in the morning playing, and Libby showed up and sang, and you showed up, and it went till 3:30 the next morning, and we're packing up, getting ready to leave. And I walk over to my neighbor and I said, hey, I'm really sorry if we were kind of noisy, kind of late. And his only response was, well, it's really nice of you to acknowledge it. That's the only thing he said. He was a little uptight. He was a nice guy, though.
I don't get that. I really don't. I don't get that. I mean, that happens at big festivals and small festivals. There's always people that are like that,
Yeah.
And I just want to say, why did you do this then?
Right.
I mean, it's when we're openly encouraging people to play music and
yes.
You should not be surprised.
Yes.
When they do, and when they do it until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I mean,
absolutely.
So it's not that I don't get it, but I always just,
we thought it was hilarious.
Why don't you just get a hotel nearby or something,
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I did go knock on someone's door at a festival called Smoke Country Jam. which is another great show. It's a great festival that we play every year.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, like we'd come in late. We were on the road, so we got to it pretty late, you know, the night before we played, and we set up camp and in the dark, you know, and morning came, you know, we saw our friends and hung out. It was late. Morning came, and I mean, at like 6:15 in the morning or something like that, all of a sudden, a foot and a half from my head, right on the other side of my tent, someone flips on a generator. It's like, you know, and I mean, it was just all encompassing noise,
right?
You know, and I thought, I wonder why maybe it won't stay on forever, you know? So like a half hour passed, and I had to go knock on his door. I went and I was like, hey, why are you running your generator right now? You know, he said, oh, we're making food. I said, but you don't need it for like air conditioning or anything. And he said, well, why? He got really mad at me, you know? I said, well, I don't know. You put it right next to my tent. When you turned it on, like it was a foot from my head. It's a little early, don't you think?
Right.
You know,
right.
You know, and it was funny. He started to yell at me, and then his wife recognized me from the band and immediately stopped him. Yeah. She said, he's in one of the bands, you know, and I just stood there in the doorway. Yeah, I just stood there in the doorway and said, I mean, if you want to get your money's worth today, I got to get another hour's sleep, buddy. You know.
That's great. That's great. All right, I got another question for you. And me being old, I heard one time this guy told me, and it might have even been you, I don't know who it was, learn every song you can when you're young, because you can't remember them when you're old. Like every song you learned when you're young, you kind of remember, but when you get old, you can't. So my question is, how do you memorize all these songs when you learn a new song?
You know, like that's an interesting point. Like I didn't say that to you.
Okay, I don't remember who it was.
I didn't say that to you. I know I didn't say that to you because like I never thought of it before, but now that I hear it, I remember things that I learned when I was 9 years old.
Yep.
And I don't remember things that I learned a year ago.
Yeah.
That's a true story. It's true, you know. How do I memorize things? Well, for one, I was always told to, you know. I like aside from playing the guitar and everything, like I was in marching band, I was in concert band in high school, and it was a lot of memorizing, you know. Mm-hmm. And then I went to college for music, you know. I went to Duquesne, and even though I have a jazz guitar degree from Duquesne, I studied sound recording, and what I really got into was choir, right? Duquesne had at the time, still has, but at the time, like a world-renowned small choir, like 30-member group, and I got into it. I auditioned and I got in, which was great. I got to go to Europe a couple of times with them, and it was a great experience. But we, you know, the first week of the semester, the director handed us it was like 25 Christmas songs, right? And we're not talking like easy music. I mean, it's college level, professional level, difficult music, right? And, you know, like we made a Christmas CD that year to help fund our tour. And he said, here's this music. The recording session is next weekend. You got to have it all memorized by then, you know? And that's just how it was. So I don't know. I mean, I've got a really good memory anyway. If I see something, I do. If I see something or if I hear it, you know, like quite often I can kind of remember it, you know. Like I know lots of Springsteen lyrics, right? And it's not because I ever learned them. It's just because like I've heard Born to Run so many times that I just know it, you know. And my ear with music works the same way. Like I don't necessarily learn everything. I just kind of know how it goes, you know. So like if people were really paying attention, they'd realize how inaccurate I am a lot of the time, even with my own songs. Like I sing the lyrics backwards in my songs all the time, you know. But like I learned the story to learn lyrics. I just know the story and I try to remember what the rhymes are. Right. And I figure that anything in between that is subject to change anyway. You know, like you can watch 100 versions of Springsteen singing Thunder Road and he's not singing them all the same.
Exactly. Yep.
You know, our song Scattered Pieces, like sometimes I sing it exactly the way I wrote the words down. And then other times I sing it more like I'm telling a story, and I'll add words to it, you know, like the chorus is, it seems to me, like I'll say, but it seems to me, or, I just add things to it, you know. But it's interesting because I'm in the middle of a big project right now. I kind of cornered myself into my basement hole here by saying,
I was going to bring that up too.
yeah, by saying that I'm going to start doing request streams, and I asked people what they wanted to hear, you know, and I got really quite an extensive list of ideas. Yeah. And some of them are, it's going to be a real challenge, you know? Right. So like, I'm learning all these songs right now that I can't believe I never learned, to tell you the truth. Like a couple of band songs, you know, and like, I love the band, you know? So it's kind of like, I can't believe I never actually learned this, you know?
Right.
Yeah. You know, and like a lot of it is that because I've been in a lot of bands as just a guitar player. I've only been a singer in one band, this one. It's the only time I've ever done it. I mean, I've been a background singer and stuff, and maybe sing a song or two here and there, but mainly I just play guitar, you know? So like, I've played a lot of songs, you know, and they're all kind of the same. There's similarities. As you learn songs, you'll realize there's a lot of similarities, you know? So like, yeah, like, I don't know. Music school especially was all about the idea of internalizing it, you know, like you have to try to make it become a part of you, you know. For me, I'm like super visual about it. Like I say things to the band sometimes that they just look at me like I'm crazy. I'll be like, okay, so this song, like this song should sound like you're driving down Route 66 in New Mexico, and like that sound, you know. And they just kind of like stare at me, you know. But like the Wayne Hancock tune, Thunderstorms and Neon Signs. Yep. Right. You've seen us do that, right? Yep. That's what I mean. It has that like Old West. Yeah. Like you could, absolutely. You know, like a 1952 Packard or something like that, you know. Yeah. And like that's how I do it. That's how I do it. I get very visual ideas about it. It's also how I tend to write things. I tend to, when I need music, I'll sit on my couch and turn the volume down on my TV and put like National Geographic on or something that's just a lot of landscapes, right? You know, and I'll watch it and play.
So that was the next question. A friend of mine, Shannon, wanted me to ask, do you write the lyrics first or the music? Or is there no set way? Could it be either way?
I have no idea if there's a set way. Okay. Right. I don't. And like, so I tried to write songs for a really long time before I got any that were any good, you know? Okay. Like, and I would like arguably say like I was like in my mid 30s before I wrote one that I was like, yeah, that's actually, I don't hate that, you know? And a lot of it was about the words. Just like, I just didn't really have a lot of confidence in my lyric writing. But now, I mean, I have them all. I have like somewhere here, journals and journals and journals of like old lyrics going back 20 years, you know? And I read them now and I'm like, you know, that wasn't that bad. Like I should have maybe had a little bit more faith in myself there, you know? But I can tell you that the vast majority of the songs that the band plays, right, that people like, right, I either wrote the words down first, right, and had a melody in my head, right, and then I built a song around that, or there's like scattered pieces, right, like my favorite song. I know you like that song. Yeah. So like, you know, there's a long story about what inspired it, you know, what put me in that mindset. But what actually happened was I've just been playing this little music idea, which is the very beginning of the song, like the first thing you hear, right? I was just playing that and I thought like, that's a cool song. That could be a song. You know, it had kind of a good little groove to it, you know? And I don't know, like a day later or something like that, I've been working on like 6 other songs, you know? And I had papers like this laying around, just with never-ending lyrics on them, you know.
Right.
And I walked through my kitchen. In my kitchen, there's like a breakfast bar, right? And I grabbed a piece of paper and I just wrote down little boy, little girl, little waterfall world, little valley shaded green, building up a dam with the mud on their hands, making puddles in a little stream, you know. And like within a minute and a half or 2 minutes, I had the whole song. I just wrote it down, you know. And then this was before I met Libby, you know. My then girlfriend was here, and she started talking to me about something, and I said, you can't talk to me right now. I have to do this. And like I grabbed a guitar and I came down here in the basement, and like within 10 minutes or so, I had most of it, you know, most of it. It took me a really long time to write the last verse, like a really long time. And it's still, I think I copped out in it a little bit. There's lines in the last verse that I don't like, you know, but they make the point, which is sometimes more important than liking what you've said.
Right.
You know, sometimes you just make the point. Everything can't be, there were ghosts in the eyes of all the boys you sent away. Right. You know, they haunt these dusty beach roads and the skeleton frames of burned out Chevrolets. I mean, that's like such an incredible series of words to string together.
Yeah.
You know, paint such a good picture.
Yeah.
You know, like can't always be that way. But I mean, so yeah, like, and I think that I think the better, like my answer is that it doesn't necessarily come from either thing, right? It kind of comes from both. Sometimes you can use the words to find music and vice versa.
Right.
But the one thing I really do believe in is that, like, if you just try to write, if I say I need 12 songs for a project, right? I have to write like 60. I have to start 60 or 70 songs, you know. Some of them knowingly stupid.
Right.
I just know, like, this is never going to be anything. I'm just doing it, you know. Like today's
the path.
It's just the song of today. I'm just going to write this today, you know. And through that, eventually I'll get hung up. You know, I'll have like a pile of things that aren't done, you know, and I'll get frustrated with it, you know. And then out of the blue, like some other song happens, you know. Scattered Pieces was like that. Smokestacks was like that, you know, and they actually were written at about the same time. They're written at essentially the same time, you know. They're kind of similar in a way, you know. And then like the song that, like Old Red Hill, our song Old Red Hill, that one I wrote the mandolin, the music. Was just this thing I played on the mandolin, right? And over the course of a few weeks, I told the story of that song on paper. I have it somewhere. I filled up a whole like 30-page tablet with 4-line couplets of like the biography of my uncle's life. Wow. You know, yeah, it was like, I mean, it was like Woody Guthrie level, like just a lot of words, you know. And then I went back over it and I picked the 4 that I thought actually made it complete. And that was all I needed, you know. So like, I don't know, I gave a songwriting workshop once, you know, and like, I don't know if it was a good or bad workshop. I don't know, because I know everybody had questions like that. And my answer was like, you just have to let it happen. It's a combination of like being determined, you know, and letting it happen, but not being afraid. Like, it's almost like you restrain yourself by like having an idea of what you're going to do. You know, well, I'm going to write this melody and then I have to put chords to it and then I need words. Well, that could be really limiting, you know, and it can, and you can become very lazy. You can start to sound like yourself a lot, you know. I guarantee you during this year, I've started 7 or 8 new songs that, like, what I do is I just play them into my phone, you know, I record them and then I don't listen to them for like a week or 2. I go back every couple of weeks and just listen, you know, and like, they're just new versions of my old songs. They're like the same thing, you know, same melodies, all that kind of stuff, you know? So like, yeah, then you have to like, then it becomes like weeding those out, you know, like the songs that I wrote for the last studio record for Poison River, were like, they were all different. The song called Moonlight Gown,
Mm-hmm.
was one that just kind of popped in my head,
Mm-hmm.
And it was different. The song that's called The Home Front was actually, I mean, I hesitate to say this, but I wrote that song like from the mindset of like making fun of Kenny Chesney.
Really?
It was. Yeah, really. Like, yeah. There's a Kenny Chesney song called Don't Blink.
Uh-huh.
It's like, don't blink, it's just like that. You're 6 years old, and then you take
Right.
a nap. It's a really nice song. It's just like a corny pop country song, It's like, to me, And I made a joke one time. I said, like, I'm just gonna write like a homesick song, and I'm just gonna say I want to get back there.
Right.
It's meaningless, but it's like, I was like, I'm writing this for the guys with like lifted Ford pickup trucks, drinking beers in a field, and it's all Coors Light, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, so like I just and then I messed around and I wrote the first verse, and like Libby looked at me and said, I think that's the best verse lyrics you've ever written.
Wow.
Well, it's like simple,
Yeah.
It's true. Where I live, you spend half the time in the cold.
Right.
Summer burns the autumn into gold. Like, that happens.
Yeah.
And like it ended up, I mean, it's Libby's favorite song of mine, and I just laughed. Like, I was thinking, like, I'm gonna pitch this song to like Kenny Chesney, because I could totally hear that, but so there's even that, like I've read interviews with like Paul Simon, James Taylor, I love songwriters, where they've talked about that like, they clearly they admit that everyone lifts things from everyone else. Like if you don't think that Billy Joel and Elton John were kind of simultaneously ripping each other off in a way, or even like the early Springsteen records,
right?
Like they kind of have an Elton. There's the piano stuff, there's all. Yeah. So everybody hears, you hear something and you're like, I kind of like that. I'm gonna do it my way.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's I had a teacher in college who said it really simply. He said, there's only 12 notes. There's only 12 notes in the musical scale. There's 8, but there's 12.
Right.
Like there's 8 in a scale, but there's 12 notes total. And he said, there's only so many ways you could ever put them together that are going to sound good.
Yeah.
That's
a good point. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. There's only so many ways that you can put them together that are going to sound good. So
right.
You just kind of get over it, and just write the song, and then every once in a while you end up getting lucky. You write Fire and Rain, or you write, something like that happen,
Amazing.
And the rest of it's just noise. Believe me, man. I find all these lyrics in my stuff, and I'm sometimes I'm like, what was this even about? How did it go? I don't remember.
What was I thinking?
Yeah, like what was I doing here? And a lot in my older journals, it's neat because I actually I journaled in them as well. Mm-hmm. So there'll often be like a big journal entry, and then 3 or 4 song poems after it. So that I know what I was thinking about.
Right.
Which actually makes it worse. It's like to read your 22-year-old thoughts is not something you really should do.
Right.
No, like, man, I was scary. Yeah, like I'm an idiot. No wonder I turned out this way. Look at how I was.
Well, one time, me and a few guys took a trip to Daytona Beach when we were like 17. We had just graduated from high school, and we did a lot of things that you can imagine 17-year-olds in Daytona Beach would do that you shouldn't have been doing. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, after a night of that, we sat down with a cassette recorder and recorded about 2 hours of what we did. And the 3 of us kept that tape to this day. And it's kind of gone between us. And I told him, when it comes back to me, I'm destroying it because I don't want my kids to hear it.
There's one thing. My best friend and I were like that. We would always have these bizarre adventures. Like a really good one was, I called into like 3WS or something like that one time, and I won tickets to see Journey and Foreigner.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. It was like the first Steve Perry replacement version of Journey. Okay. It was, and So I called my buddy up, I was 22 or so. And I said, hey, do you want to go to Star Lake and see Journey tonight? Not really. I said, well, it's free. Let's go, So we went and like we did the things that you would do at that time. I can't say that I was like even close to sober, when the show started, but
right.
I just wasn't, I remember like, I mean, oddly, I remember some girl talking to me, and then I remember making out with her mom, like in the crowd. Yeah. I remember like kissing her mom, but, I guess I was in rare form. So
right.
we get in my buddy's car to go home, and, like he says, man, we should go to Ocean City, and I was just like over there passed out. And I was like, okay, whatever, let's go to Ocean City. And I passed out, right? I woke up in Ocean City. He drove overnight. Like, yeah, well, I woke up on the beach, Yeah, so it's like 9 o'clock. Oh, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning. We're looking for a hotel at 9 a.m. Hard to find, We end up finding a hotel. And later that afternoon, like 200 kids, 17-year-old kids on their senior trip show up in the hotel. So suddenly we're like the people that are legal and can buy beer. There's all these high school kids around, like it wasn't the best thing, but we would do that. We would make recordings of ourselves just doing things,
Yeah.
There's one in particular. It's just called, I think I have it and I want to find it, but it's a song that was called Beeves.
Okay.
So I picked up a thesaurus one night on his couch. He had a thesaurus there, right? And I just opened it up. I see the word beeves, right? And I'm like, beeves. And I'm like, what is this? It's plural for beef. Right?
I didn't know that.
The plural of beef is beeves.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I thought beef was just all encompassing. I thought beef was
right. Beef is plural. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but it wasn't. So like, we then watched Ghostbusters, right? Like immediately after this. And there's a part in Ghostbusters where like towards the end there, they mess up and they let all the ghosts out of jail.
Right.
They did blow up the thing and they spread.
So
this song plays during that time period, during that sequence, right? And the guy's just saying, please. He's going like, please, 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 and then like the words are like, it used to be magic, magic. It used to. So we made a song. It was beeves. Thought it was cattle, like, yeah. And it was like, yeah, I wish I could find it. It was one of the funniest things, Yeah, I wish I could. Like, I'm still friends with he's still my best friend, and every once in a while he'll call me, we'll talk, and he'll be like, man, did you ever find that CD? And I'm like, no, I really wish I could though. I'd put it on Facebook. I'd be like, listen to this.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I don't want it to get too long, but I do have one more question. Well, actually, I have two more questions.
Okay.
And the first one is, where do you see JFS in 5 years?
That's hard. I don't know where I see us in 5 months.
Really?
All things considered, like the Station Inn was the last show on the schedule until Delfest the next year.
Right.
So I hope that, like, I read an article today that says that one of these vaccines that they think they're going to put out and announce here very soon is not only good for vaccinating, but it seems to be a good treatment. That would be a big deal. That would be the kind of thing that maybe by February or March would allow the industry to try to come back, so it's like, that's a big deal, it's not that we haven't played and not that I'm unwilling to play, because I'm clearly not, but it is scary.
Yeah.
It's really scary to, especially now the winters here and doing indoor things, if that's what it is, just the idea of being responsible for assembling people, and someone, I mean, the chances are slim that if you get the thing, you're going to die. I mean, it doesn't kill everyone, but
right.
Full well, just as I do, it does,
Right.
And it's hard to feel good about much, when you look at it that way and think like, man, I could like this thing that's harmless could be really harmful.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. It could.
It could. But then at the same time, it's how we all make a living, and one of the things I don't want to do is go find another way to make a living, because if I do, I'm not going to go back.
Right.
I just like, like, and that sounds terrible, but it's not, so there's that, but I actually think, unlike, I think we were pretty blessed. We worked hard during the pandemic here, and like we did a lot with getting ourselves in the online world, and like our streams, some of those streams we did got like 40 and 50,000 views. It was crazy. Yeah, the first couple. The first couple. Well, the very first one we did was March 14th. It was the day after our last show, the day after my birthday, right? And no one had really done it yet on a large scale, So we did it and shared it all over the place, and it got like 50,000 views. We made like almost $3,000 in donations that night. It was like, yeah, that would be like equivalent to like a really good show, a rare show, So, like that all worked, and we released a record that did as well as it could be expected, to not be able to tour on it and to suddenly have no budget to promote it,
right?
Which was a very true reality of it,
Right.
So, where a lot of times I think like people, myself included, or anybody, could have really negative feelings about it all and fears about it all. I mean, I know some people who just quit. They're just like, yeah, I'm just, if I come back, I come back,
Right.
And I understand that. I do. I totally understand it. But for me, it was the swarm. It was like a swarm of love that got thrown at us, like for months. It was really just like, it meant a lot to all of us, and, like we get to, when you go in, like we've had good responses from things, and it seems like through the process of booking with our agent and everything, everybody, like, we're getting a lot of like, oh yeah, I love these guys,
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's cool,
Yeah.
I would hope that it remains the same group of people as it is right now.
I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it couldn't, it might not. There've been like 16 members of the band or something like that at this point,
Yep.
And like, I have a feeling that these guys, we're all going to stick together as long as we can, but I would like, the goal is to say, we're like, how can I explain it? We used to do close to 300 shows a year, right? Like basically anywhere.
Right.
But yeah, we'll come play in your backyard before we go play in the bar tonight. Like, we'll just anything and anything,
Yep.
And that was mostly just because we needed more money, and in those periods, the pay wasn't very good,
right.
So the only way to get measurable money was to enslave yourself to it almost. So it's just like, do it constantly,
Yep.
Yeah, it's not so much that way anymore. It's not like it's even comfortable now, but it's not like that,
right.
So like, I mean, the goal would be, is to just keep going. I would like to maybe play 100 dates a year, 80 to 100 dates a year. I'd like for them to be in chunks, like a lot of them in the summer, and then maybe a couple of winter tours, and just that. I mean, that's kind of like the ultimate goal,
right?
Then it would free everybody. It would free us up to have some life, which is not something that we really have a lot of under normal circumstances.
Right.
If there's one thing about this year that's been nice, is like, it's not that I made new friends. I didn't really make new friends, but I got to be friends with people in a way that I wasn't before.
Right.
Because it was always just like, yeah, you come see me play, and I hang out with you for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and that's awesome, but like, I'm in and out. We're in and out, always on the go, and this year I got to actually make some friends, which is pretty nice. And, being home a lot has its ups and downs.
Right.
You know, I don't love it, but I don't hate it.
Right.
You know, I want to go back out.
Right.
You know, but yeah, the Nashville thing really, like, yeah, I just forgot. You know, I forgot. Like, you've seen. I think this would be the same for any band. You know, I'm not just saying this is us, any band, right?
Right.
But like, you know, when you see a band and they're on their home turf a lot, right? It's one thing. But when you go see them somewhere else, you know, where they have to fight for it a little bit, it's different.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's different. And JFS shows on the road are different. They are. They're like, they're a lot more. There's a big energy about it, you know, and like, it was certainly there at the Station Inn.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, to the point where we were all just giggling the whole time. Like, everybody just laughing, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe, you know. So I hope we get to keep doing that, because we've been really lucky. And I mean, I'm really lucky to just be like, it'd be impossible to really quantify just how lucky I think I am.
I'm just a really positive person. And
I know.
It's just my nature. You know, some people are the way they are, and I'm a positive person. And I think you guys are going to go for a long time. I really do. We're going to get through this, and there's light at the other side.
We are.
Yeah.
We are. We will. You know, I mean, things need to calm down a little bit.
They do. You know, even me, who, you know, I didn't go to Nashville, but I still went to 3 shows that weekend, even though I didn't get to go to Nashville.
Oh man, I mean,
I got to see Sam Stuckey. I got to see some great shows.
I mean, I'm not like innocent of the.
But I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not doing it anymore.
I have one kind of private one this weekend, and then Libby and I have one next week, and the week after that, and then there's possibly a band show. Well, there is a band show scheduled in Pittsburgh in December, about a month from now, but it's inside. It's inside, so it remains to be seen.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I talked to them today, and I said, you know, I said, like, I just don't know if I can put enough people in it right now.
Right.
You know, like, from what I can tell by monitoring the old interwebs, a lot of the JFS tribe is they're battening down. Yeah, they're gonna.
I definitely am. If you were to do that, I would be on the fence. I would probably go, but I wouldn't. I'd be fighting it.
But that's the thing. That's the thing about it. And I think that, like, people on my end of it should open their eyes to this. Is that like, yeah, I need the money. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I really need it, you know. But like, because people are so starved for it, they'll take the risk. Right. You know, and like, it just takes one irresponsible person showing up. Yeah. You know, just one person that's like, no, I'm not wearing the mask, or I haven't felt well for 3 days. I have a low grade fever, but I'm not going to go get checked. Right. You know, and then, like, all of a sudden, you know, if there's 100 people in a room, 75 of them are sick, you know, and like, at that rate, you might lose one. Yeah. You know? And we don't want that. I don't want that. I just don't. Right. I don't.
My last question is, dude, you have so many great stories, and everybody's bugging you to write a book. I want to know if you're ever going to write a book. Have you thought about it? Is it something that maybe you're going to do one day? We barely touched the surface of the thing.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you know, yeah, like, it's funny. It's like, it's a matter of, I'm better, it seems to me, I feel like I'm better at telling the story, right, than I would be at writing it down, right? So it's almost like the only way for me to do this, right, would be, would just be for me to, like, tell the story and record myself telling it, right, and then go back and write it. Yeah. You know, but the only way that it really works is if I have an audience to tell the story to, right? And some of them, people just won't let me get through. They're just like, you know, you've heard some of them. They're so outlandish that people are like, wait a minute, like, you know, and
it's like every story.
It was so funny, you know, like I was I don't remember where it was, but Ray and I, like, you know,
Mhm.
Ray and I hang out a lot when
Mhm.
we're on the road, you know,
Right.
like we were just hanging out with somebody and like someone brought up the stories, you know, and like I told one, they brought up a story and I told the story, and like everybody just kind of looked at me like in disbelief, right? You know, and Ray said, you know, I was not there for that. You
Mhm.
know, he said this happened a long time before I knew Gary. He said, but having spent like the last 4 or 5 years with him a lot, you know, he said, I believe every word of it. He said, because like things just happen to
Right.
me, you
Right.
know, and they do, you know. I'm
They
kind of
do.
open to them. I'm kind of open to them though. I will put myself in situations where something weird might happen
Mhm.
just to, you know, just to see if it does, you know. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'd like to do it. I would like to do it. I'd like, it would almost be like, I've been thinking about it a lot, you know. I thought about maybe just doing a blog page where it's all short stories, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Or one of the ideas this guy told me, a person a couple of years ago offered to fund me, like, to give me some money
Mhm.
to write a book with, you know. And I like really didn't understand why. I was like, well, why do I need money to write the book, like to actually do it, you know? Like, I mean, I guess to print it and stuff you need some money, you
Right.
know, but
Right.
like actually doing it, I didn't need a stipend for it, you know. But
Mhm.
he wanted me to interlace the stories with like a how-to guide on how to have started out playing in fields and end up even remotely involved in the music industry.
Right.
Like that's what it was. He wanted me to do this. It was like a twofold thing, you know. And he was like coming up with titles. He was giving me stupid titles, you know. And I said, well, I could tell you right now, the best way I could describe it is the title of my book would be How to Get to the Top of the Bottom. You know, you know.
You were there
So
a couple of years ago.
yeah, well, but like, it's a good book. It would be a good book
Yeah,
title.
that's a
Yeah,
great one.
you know, how to get to the top of the bottom, and
Yeah.
almost every story I have, my life experience in general
Uh-huh.
could fit into that theme.
Amazing.
You know,
Yeah. That's awesome.
so maybe one day,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I really enjoyed it. I certainly hope we can, there's a lot more. I hope we can do it again.
Yeah, man.
Maybe
Yeah,
if the band's there one day and you think of it, let me know. We'll do the whole band.
I will.
Maybe if whatever, just let me know and we'll do it again. And I've got a list of people that I'm really excited to have on the show, but you're probably one of my favorite of all. And I was
Oh,
so
well,
happy to
thanks,
have you
Dave.
here, dude.
I
So
appreciate it. Thanks. Glad to
thank
help.
you, thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording and
Okay.
thank you. Let's see.
Yeah.
Stop.